right. Hey, everybody. We are back with another episode of The Locker Room. I am joined with Solomon Bliss, one of our FCA staff. We're excited to get into an incredible topic that I think is super relevant for a lot of our coaches today. And it's going to be around the coach parent relationship, how we can handle that, the benefit to it. Do we keep parents involved? How much do we allow them to be involved? I just feel like this is a topic that I know me as a coach, when I was a young coach, like first starting out, I kind of struggled with it a little bit. And I think, to some degree, I think coaches still struggle with it, especially at the youth level. You get to college, it's going to be a little bit different. But youth level, parents are still obviously very involved. You got parents driving kids to practice. Parents sometimes are the main communicators for the kids. So the parents are going to be involved, but this episode is going to be all about, this conversation is going to be all about how do we handle that well, and to make it an asset, to make our parents an asset and not an enemy, which can be a fine line sometimes. So, without further ado, before we kind of get into the meat of this, Saul, why don't you just kind of give us a little introduction, who you are, what you do with us at FCA, just give our listeners a little introduction to yourself.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity to talk through this very important topic. But yeah, so I've been involved with FCA for 10 years now, not officially on staff for almost 10 years now. But I was invited to come out and do a lacrosse camp. I played football, basketball, and lacrosse in high school, and was fortunate enough to keep playing lacrosse after high school. And so I was invited to do an FCA lacrosse camp, and way back in the summer of, I think 2012,
Mm.
and had a great time with it. It was really interesting to see. I'd not been involved in youth sports that much, still fairly young at that time, but it was interesting to see how you could, do all the drills, skills, and fundamentals and all that stuff. But then there was also this separate time where you had an opportunity to focus on your faith and to do a lot of team building things and just have a whole. It was almost like two separate camps. There was a lacrosse side, an athletic side, and then there was a faith component that I was really intrigued with. So. After that, I was invited, I was asked about being a full-time staff member, and I didn't think too much about it. I was a public school teacher at the time, and I'm like, I just don't think I have the time for that. There's no way I could do it. Had young kids at that time, and um, this guy kept inviting me to things, and I just fell more in love with what FCA was all about, and I let my principal at the school know that I was going to be ending, at the end of the year, I was going to be done teaching and moving into FCA into ministry full time. And he's like, I think that's awesome. I talked with a lot of people that I knew. Actually, I went to, my brother, but also my high school basketball coach, who was very influential to me, asked him about his thoughts and kind of prayed through it with him. And yeah, I just had a lot of peace in it. So I've been doing that for 10 years, running the lacrosse ministry. We basically are, I tell everyone that doesn't really know, too much about lacrosse or club or youth sports. I'm like, we just think of us as AAU basketball, but lacrosse. And then they're like, oh, I get it. So you do a lot of tournaments. And so lacrosse is still kind of new to a lot of people. But yeah, we run teams. We have second graders in our program all the way up to juniors in our program, boys and girls, and we do box lacrosse. And we've done a lot of different things over the years, but we're staying true with lacrosse, and it's been a lot of fun. It still continues to be fun, challenging at times for sure.
Sure.
And this topic is a very, very important topic. So it is interesting. We've been blessed with some really great parents in our program. But we're not always surrounded at the tournaments we go to. We're not always surrounded with great people, and everyone has their moments. So it's we all slip up. So it's interesting.
No, that's good. And thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned a couple of things, and I just wrote down a couple of questions as you were speaking. Do you remember where that first camp was that you were involved with?
Yeah, as Roberts Wesleyan in
That's awesome.
Rochester. Yeah.
I think it's cool, like, hearing, we get to know a lot of our staff here in the Northeast region. Obviously, we're on staff together in New York, but kind of hearing everyone's little bit of story. Now, I got introduced to FCA through a job application. That was the first time I ever heard of it, but it's always encouraging to like hear so many of our staff are coming on staff after they've been involved with FCA. So for you, it was being invited to help with a camp. For other people, maybe it was volunteering with something, or their kids were involved with it to some degree, and now they're coming on staff to be part of it. It's just always I don't know, it's always fun. And for people listening, maybe this is a knock on your door to think about, hey, maybe I should go into sports ministry with FCA. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Always looking for help.
yeah. So, do you, as one of the lacrosse directors, do you still coach a team, or do you just oversee most of them?
I do. I used to oversee more. It just becomes difficult with schedules. I have a junior in high school and a freshman in high school, and when you're at practice, it's easy to go to every team and everywhere, but when you start going to tournaments, it becomes difficult. Like we're all different states, so it's hard to coach a lot of different teams. But there's also an impact piece that we're trying to be influential. We're trying to have an impact. Not just with the kid, mostly with the kids, but
Mhm.
with the parents as well. And I do feel it's tough to have that impact if you're just kind of drop it in here and there all the time, and I've never been a huge fan of the part of youth sports where it's like, hey, 58, come over here, hey, 22,
Mm,
like you don't even know the kid's name. How can you really coach the kid?
yeah.
How can you have a relationship with the kid? So I do as much as I can to see all the different teams and to see the players and support the coaches and parents. But I coach my sons every sport's different. We in lacrosse go by graduation year. So he
Yeah.
graduates high school in 2028. So his team's the 2028 team. So
Okay.
I coach that team. Um, and then I also coach a high school team here in Syracuse, Janesville DeWitt.
Nice. I think you just mentioned something on the coaching piece of just like getting to like you want to know your players and things like that because that's how you're gonna make the impact and build a relationship. I think it's important for coaches to understand there's there's two types of coaches. There's people there that are just filling a void, right? And those are probably the coaches that as soon as if practice is from 3:30 to 5:30, they're there at 3:25, walking to
Yeah.
the field, and then at 5 o'clock the whistle blows and they get in their car, you
Yeah.
know. But I think it's important for coaches in general, like if you want not only to see your players succeed on the field, really, but also just like in life and be able to really learn who they are. And that way that also makes you a better coach and them a better athlete. Like you need to make that extra time. It's not just let me just get this over with. It is truly how can I make the better impact on these kids? And sometimes that is, just knowing their name and not just their number, as simple as it sounds.
Yeah. No, it's a sacrifice. It's a grind. I give, every coach that tries to be the best coach or they're working to be the best coach they can be, it's not easy. It takes a lot of time and there's a lot of, um, I was given a book by someone. It said choosing what to cheat.
Hmm.
And I'm like, geez, this doesn't seem like a very good book. Like you're going to cheat all, it's basically if you're doing something, that means you're not doing something else. And, so what are you going to cheat? What are your priorities is essentially what the book was about. And, coaches that do what you're talking about, they're getting there early, setting the field up, you know, saying hi to the first person that shows up to practice. Um, even though it starts at 5, like the old saying is if you're on time, you're late, like, well, you can't say that, coach, and then you also be on time, you're late.
Yeah.
So they're choosing to do something, to not do something else if they're going to be there early and then they're going to, end late. And, I was just thinking about one of the one of the best moments I had as a coach was this group. I coach defense, and this group of defenders, the day before the practice before our game, they just started like hanging out and talking, and I would always hang out, and um, they made it like a thing, a tradition that the night before the practice, before a game, we would, as a defensive unit, just sit down and chat about,
Mhm.
not about lacrosse, just about stuff, for 15, 20 minutes. And it's like that had nothing to do with practice. That, we weren't X's and O's, we weren't game planning. It was just hanging out afterwards. And so how do you become an influencer if you're not spending time?
Yeah.
And that's where, that's just the DNA of a coach, I think, of a good
Mhm.
coach. Like you said, there are people that have to fill a void, but and that's important too, because you don't have a team if you don't have a coach.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it's important to show that sacrifice, because you're asking that of your athletes. Like, I want you to sacrifice time. They're choosing not to hang out with their friends. They're choosing to be at practice.
Mhm.
Um, so we got to do that too.
So, obviously you being with our lacrosse ministry, what do you what do you see as the differentiating factor between FCA lacrosse club and most other club teams?
Well, I mean, I'll preface this with we're not always perfect,
Mhm.
and we never claim to be, but we do try to make it a full family experience. And I was just we're talking through our summer practice schedule just before I was on this call, and we try to look at, like, okay, what what teams have, you know, brothers or sisters. They're on different teams, but they're part of, they're part of the same family. Like, how can we maneuver the schedule to make it so it's easier on parents to,
Mhm.
get their kids there? They don't have to, two separate practice times. We try to make it easier for parents to be involved in club sports. Um, and I think I think, clubs do that. But I think we try to make the net, an extra step into how can we make this not only easier, but also a better experience for the whole family. We deal a lot with athletes, but we involve the parents as much as what would make sense. And we try to think about, some of the hardships that families have to go through to be a part of travel sports, and we try to minimize those hardships as best we can.
Yeah.
And we also try to really, you know, um, push the team aspect of, I mean, I feel like, anyone that is in sports, there's all these intangibles that you get on a sports that have nothing to do with a scoreboard, and at the end of it, of course, I mean, I've never said to any athlete, like, I want you to be okay. I want you to try to lose, like, no
Mhm.
coach has ever said that. Um, we all want to win. We all love winning, but if we try to not prioritize that as the number one thing, um, and it really isn't, and we're competitive, and we will never not be competitive
Mhm.
as coaches, as athletes. But if we're defined by that, then, what happens when we lose?
Yeah.
So that's like a preface of what we try to go off of. Another saying that we use all the time, and I think it kind of sums up what we're trying to do. We talk about roles, we talk about jobs and expectations, and we very cleanly, we say this to parents, we say it to our players, we say it to our coaches, and we say in FCA, the job of the coach is to love the players, and the job of the players is to love each other. And, that's something that we will always try to, replicate in all of our teams. And then, hopefully a lot of our coaches coach in, other, town programs or high school programs. And we're hoping that they take that mentality into the teams that they're coaching as well, and kind of spread that out a little bit. And like I said, it's not always perfect. We also, one thing that I know is 100% different than any other club that's in town is we do our FCA huddles at every
Mhm.
practice and tournament, and that's where we're introducing biblical scriptures to the kids, and we talk about it, and we always try to relate the scripture to the sport. So we're talking about lacrosse. We say, okay, how does this scripture line up with what we're doing in practice today, or what we did in practice today? And um, so that I know is different. I don't. It'd be great if there was other clubs doing that, but I don't think there is.
Yeah.
But we have scripture tied into everything that we do.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love being part of an organization that makes that the key of what we're trying to do. We're not, it's not just about, I think we mentioned this. I didn't even mean to say this on a meeting that we had a couple like last month, but it's about saving souls, not just scoring goals.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You could keep that one for you. You can keep that in your back pocket if you need
Yeah, I mean that probably was a soccer thing at first, but it
to.
it it rings true with lacrosse as well.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, yeah. So let's, we've kind of mentioned a little bit about it, but let's start really getting into this, parent coach dynamic and that relationship.
Yeah.
I guess my first question for you is, obviously you've been coaching for a while now. You've coached a lot of different levels. You've competed at high levels. Um, for you as a coach, do you prefer to have parents at a distance? Do you enjoy them to be very involved, or is there a happy medium for you?
Yeah, it's definitely morphed throughout my coaching years, and I think any good coach will tell you they never stop learning,
Mm,
and I never stop trying to get better. And I coming out of college, I ended up going back to for a little while. I ended up going back to the high school I graduated from to coach and to teach. And I was sitting in the coach's locker room, and my high school coach, who I loved him, and he was great. He we were just talking, and he's like, "Saul, let me tell you, we have the coach's sideline and we have the parents' sideline, and they should never meet." And I'm
mm,
like, "Okay, that's thanks, coach. That's what I'll do." Yes,
yeah,
sir. And so, like, that's how I kind of ran things for a little while. And I wasn't a head coach; I was an assistant coach, so I didn't really have a lot to do with the parents, anyways. But and then as I started going through it, I'm like, man, this just doesn't feel like it's making a whole lot of sense.
mm,
Like you said, to open this up, like parents have to get, kids have to get there. And until they're juniors and seniors, they're not driving themselves.
yeah,
They got to get home, like I don't know too many kids that are buying themselves cleats,
yeah,
they're not buying their own. So the parents have to be involved.
mm,
And what are we doing it for if we're not trying to, you know, get our kids better, and through that maybe even trying to help support the parents a little bit. Like we're trying to get our kids better at lacrosse, but we're also, you know, I'm fortunate enough to, I don't know if I'm fortunate enough or not fortunate, but I'm fortunate enough to say I've played at the highest level, and I've been, you know, paid to play this sport,
mm,
and you don't make any money. So you're not going to make a living off lacrosse.
yeah,
Not playing it anyway. So, the game's going to end, and you got to be you got to be a person. You got to be a functioning member of society. And, we want to help our athletes do that, but we're also there to support our parents, support the parents in what they're trying to do. No different than teachers are trying to support what
mm,
parents are trying to do in the schools. And, so there is a level of involvement that I think is really important. Um, you just have to set the boundaries, I think it's the job of a head coach, to set those expectations, and be um, flexible enough to have the one-on-one conversations if need be, but be firm enough and confident enough that you can draw lines and stick to them.
mm,
And when you need, because it's eventually it's going to start hurting the kids.
yeah,
I've seen it. Everyone's seen it way too many times where kids just stop playing sports, not because they don't love the sport, not because they want to do something else, but they don't want to deal with what's going on at home
yeah,
for a game. They don't want to deal with what's going on in the car ride home from a game. They don't want to deal with what's going on at the dinner table.
mm,
They just don't want to deal with it. And I can say that because I'm a parent, and I've slipped up too.
yeah.
You know, So
that dreaded car ride home for an athlete that,
yeah, yeah,
missed the defender messed up and let the game winning goal or something like that.
yeah, yeah. So, if and I actually just said this to my son the other day, if you don't give someone an answer, they're going to make up an answer themselves,
Mhm.
and so you need to communicate what's going on, or people are just going to assume, and hopefully they're going to go with what makes the most sense. But if what makes the most sense isn't what actually happened, then, and you're not telling them what actually happened, then, they're not going to have all the information. So
Yeah.
if if a coach doesn't let a parent communicate and let a parent in on a little bit,
Mhm.
then they're going to make their own stuff up. They're going to be on the sideline, they're going to be in the bleachers, and they're going to be, saying this or saying that, or, making up their own stuff. So if you give them a little bit of information, an appropriate amount of information, um, they'll know where you're coming from at least. Like I I'm a I'm a, going back to, the spending 20 minutes after practice talking to my defenders. Those kids knew I love them,
Mhm.
so I was really hard on them, because I'm a competitor. And I do like to win, and I'm pushing kids to, be the best. So I can be pretty tough, but there's not in my opinion, I hope, my goal is that there's never going to be a kid that I coach that doesn't know how much I care for him,
Mhm.
and through that, they know what your intentions are.
Mhm.
They know that I'm just, hey, you're the one that showed up to play on this team. Maybe you're the one that said, I want to be a college lacrosse player. Maybe you're the one that said, I want to, I'm a freshman and I want to make it to the varsity team. I want to try out and be on a varsity team or something like that. You're the one that said that. I'm just going to try and help you get there.
Mhm.
So I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to do the best, to the best of my abilities to help you with the goal that you made for yourself. Um, you know, and that's going to be hard sometimes.
Yeah.
And with parents too, like I think it's really important for parents to understand that, uh, the coach loves their son or loves their
Mhm.
daughter and cares for them. And you can't do that if you say, stay over there,
Sure.
that's your sideline over there.
Yeah.
You can't communicate if you're putting up, how much you care for your son, their son,
Mhm.
uh, if you put up a brick wall.
Yeah. I think trying to think back to like when I first started coaching, I think I took that mentality of like, okay, like don't involve the parents with anything. Don't talk to them. Don't look at them. If you don't make eye contact, they won't talk to you. Type of a thing. Like
Yeah.
walk on the field. And so I feel like my first season or two were definitely like that. And then kind of like you, like I kind of morphed that, and I wanted the parents to be involved. Like I wanted the parents to feel like they could approach me, like I was an approachable person. We could have a conversation. Um, but I also did. We were talking about boundaries, and talk about that more in a minute. But I did kind of make the expectation of like, hey, like I'm coaching baseball, so like when your son is on the field, like he's mine for those 2 or 3 hours. Please don't coach from the sidelines.
Yeah.
I'm not coming to your house and yelling from the back door. Don't do this. So like don't do that to us, right? So there's that little bit of respect, and I think if you do set those boundaries, most parents are willing to accept that because they're like, all right, they made this point, and it's almost like if coach said this to the entire team, like, and then you have Joe's dad that's just still trying to coach from the sidelines, like all the other parents almost kind of like jump in and be like, hey Joe, like pull back a little bit. So there is that part of it too, but
Yeah.
also you just talk about like you care about these kids, and you know you love these kids, and we want the parents to trust us. We want them to, like, they're entrusting us with their kids to, because they probably signed us. A lot of club teams, like, you sign up for the club and you don't know who your coach is till first day of
Right.
practice, right? So
Right.
like maybe they didn't have a choice in that, but when they get to know you, like, okay, now I trust this coach, but not just for the X's and the O's, but I trust this coach because I could see that he cares, or I could see that he has the right intentions. I could see that he's trying to improve my son or my daughter, not just on the field, but off the field. And so I do think just being open with the parents, like when you're walking off the field, like, hey Joe, hey Rebecca, like how was the birthday party this weekend or whatever it was, right? Like just
Yeah.
having those little conversations, because that just allows them to be open. And it hit me one time. I think it was like 2 summers ago. I had a kid. He he had a rough family upbringing, broken home, and all these different things. And one day, like oh man, he was just on my nerves, and he was cursing the dugout, and he was like just giving us real attitude and like being real rude to his teammates. So I pulled him from the game. Right, I'm like, all right, I'm like, you're coming off, man. And I told him to sit in the dugout, and he's still like, chirping under his breath. I'm like, just get out of the dugout, get out. We can't have you in here. And I talked to him afterwards. I'm like, we'll talk after the game. So I go up to him, I'm talking, he's crying, he's telling me all this stuff, and his mom comes up to me, is like, something had happened with their family the night before. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like now I feel like a jerk, right? Because I kicked this kid out. But it got me to realize, like, man, if maybe if I had opened myself up a little bit more, or maybe if I had, I made them feel more comfortable where they could tell me some things that are going on in their life, because that does affect how the kids are operating on the field. And so maybe if the mom felt more comfortable to approach me and say, like, hey, coach, just so you know, like, this is going on. So, you know, you know, Jimmy is not in the right headspace. Just so I want to give you a heads up. Do whatever you gotta do, but just want to give you a heads up.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that was important for me. I'm like, wow, okay, like I want to be more involved with these kids' lives off the field, but like that was an eye opener for me of like I need to know what's going on, and the only way that I'm going to know is if they feel comfortable sharing it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I try to go into every conversation because inevitably as a coach, there's going to be tough conversations you're going to have with parents, and they're not like as talented as as much as might think the game, and as great of a coach as you are, and as long as you've been doing it, you're not going to have every parent be 100% pleased with you, and so there's going to be those tough phone calls, and you probably know they're coming.
hmm,
You're probably coaching a game knowing I'm probably going to get a phone call from this person, um, and it doesn't mean you don't do what you're going to do. You don't
sure.
change what you're going to do just because you don't want to make a phone call or have a phone call. But I try in those situations, I always try to understand, and I truly believe this. I always try to understand, like, listen, every parent just wants the best for their kid, and that's not wrong of them to want that.
Mhm.
Like I want the best for my kids. Why should, the parents of the kids I'm coaching not want the best for their son or their daughter? So people communicate it better than others. But really, like every parent just wants the best for their kid,
Mhm.
and so I have to understand that as a coach. And I also am pretty open to telling that to parents. Like, listen, I know that you just want the best for your kid, and that is 100% okay. I understand that. And I agree with you that you should want the best for your kid.
Yeah.
I want the best for my kid, but when I'm the coach, that's not my main priority.
Mhm.
It's not the best for just your kid. My priority has to be, I want what's best for the team.
Yeah.
So you are welcome to have the conversation with me about, with the mindset, I want the best for my kid. But just, and I understand that you need to understand that I want what's best for the team. And that's my role as a coach. Now, when I take that hat off and I'm a parent, um, you know, I'm a coach also. I try to understand that when I communicate with coaches, but I want the best for my kids, and sometimes the best for my kid isn't give him everything he wants. Like we don't do that as parents. I don't give my kid candy all the time. Like I know it's not the best for him, so I don't give him everything he wants. He's going to have to learn, tough lessons, and that's best for my kid. Some people are better, understand that better than others, but that's okay. And it goes to, we talk a lot of these issues probably come up around games. Everyone is, no one's counting minutes during a practice. They're probably not even there,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they're at the games. They show up for games, and they don't see any of the practice stuff. So, I communicate this with parents too. Every adult has one of three jobs when they go to a game. They're either a coach, they're a ref, or they're a spectator.
Hmm.
You're one of those three people, and you're only one of those three people. You can't be two.
Yeah.
Like I don't ever, as a coach, just sit back and spectate and, sit down and, kick my feet up and just watch the game.
Mhm.
I, I can't do that as a coach. That's not my job. I'm supposed to be coaching,
Yeah.
and I coach, sometimes I coach harder than other times. It's just the game calls for it. But and I screw up the ref, not being a ref thing. Coach, I first one to admit that I screw that up sometimes. But
Oh yeah.
I ask that of our parents, and that's something that we talk about how I've, tried to learn throughout the years. I know that as soon as I open up my mouth to a ref, there's, whatever, five, six parents that are just looking at me and like, okay, boom, doors open. Now I can open up my mouth to a ref.
Yeah.
And, so when it comes to safety or when it comes to our kids being wronged, like I got to stick up for my
Of
kids.
course.
But if it's like a judgment call, I didn't think that ball was out of bounds. Well, the ref did think it was on it. Like, that's nothing to argue about. There's no safety in that. So, we do these parent meet. I always do parent meetings at the beginning of the season and then throughout the season too, talk with parents a lot. And those two things I keep in mind. You're always going to want what's best for your kid. And my expectation is you're going to be one of those three roles, and if you're not a coach, don't coach. If you're not a
Yeah.
ref, don't ref, but enjoy spectating. Like, man, geez, there's nothing better than watching my kids play. Like,
Mhm.
we're getting into basketball season now where there's, going to be two or three games a night, or two or three games a week, for my kids. And I'm like, man, I just can't wait to watch my kids play. I want to enjoy watching my kids play. Um,
Mhm.
you know, it goes quick.
I, I I love talking to coaches about this topic. Sometimes coaches think they have a pretty good idea, and I've learned from a lot of coaches, and some coaches really struggle with the parent stuff. Um, but I think the most important thing that we can do as coaches, and you just mentioned there at the end, is like have the parent meetings. Like you
Yeah.
need to have one, if not multiple, for sure. Right there, that one you have to have that one in the very beginning of the season. And as coaches, you need to go and prepare it. So, you know, I know you mentioned like FCA is focused on like the team mentality and our core values and things like that, and obviously
Yeah.
using scripture and how we teach our kids. But like if you're a coach of a club team, high school team, whatever it is, like maybe like before the season starts, right? Start putting together like, hey, what do I want to accomplish this year? What do I want like our goals to be? What do I want a theme to be? What is my coaching philosophy going to be this year? And like kind of bullet point that out and then share that with the team, with the parents. I've done team meetings and I've printed stuff out. I'm like, hey, this is how I coach, and this is the expectations for that you can have on me. This is the expectations I have for the parents. These are the expectations I have for the players. So now you guys all know what the expectations are for everybody. If there's an issue, we can go back to this. But I think it's just important to set that early because if you don't do it in the beginning of the season and then 2, 3, 4 weeks later happen and there's an issue, it's very hard to kind of smash it.
Yeah.
And then the parents don't understand either. So
Yeah.
definitely setting that boundaries and those expectations early. And then there's a time where especially a long season, a whole summer, or whatever. Like you might want to go revisit it, or maybe it is having a one-on-one conversation with a parent. But don't be afraid to set those and set it early and stick to it. And also as coaches, you said it like we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, whether that's in the game, we make the wrong strategy call, we put the wrong kid in, whatever it might be. It's going to happen, but also like we need to be able to own up to that stuff. And like if we mess up, hey, like let the parents know, like, hey, this was the expectation that I had early on in the year. This is something that I wanted to implement. I haven't done a good job of that, and that's on me. Like I need to fix that. Let those things be known because otherwise they're just gonna be talking bad about you behind your back anyway.
Yeah. 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 And there's different, like, when you do travel ball, it's a way different setup than it is for high school ball.
Yeah.
Like, and that's something we talk about with our coaches. Like, you can't coach travel lacrosse like you coach your high school varsity team. It's not the same.
Mhm.
It's the same sport, the same principles, same fundamentals, but you can't manage the same way. Like when I coach a varsity team, a varsity high school team, my mindset is this is probably for the most part, and stats show this is probably the last level of lacrosse these kids are ever going to play.
Mhm.
Like some of our kids go on to play college, but for a multitude of different reasons, they don't. So that's that for most high school kids, the varsity season is the most competitive level of lacrosse they'll ever play. So we're trying to win. and we're doing everything we can to win that game. You know, when we do travel lacrosse, we're still very competitive, but we typically play five in the summer, we play 5 or 6 games over the course of a weekend, and they're not as long, that kind of thing, but so you can manage it differently.
Yeah.
And we're very in tune to the fact that we have tryouts. The kids are paying to be a part of it. We don't, paying doesn't equal playing time, but we did have tryouts and we chose them to be on this team, and we try to manage our rosters in a way that, we're not taking 40 kids on a team. We're making cuts, and so we cut other people for this kid to be on this team. We
Mhm.
should honor them with some playing time. And then especially as they're younger kids, like, there's who cares if you win a third grade championship? Way
Yeah.
too many people care about that. And
Yeah.
we're going to try to, but we're not going to have Johnny over there sitting the bench driving from, New York State to Delaware and sitting the bench for 6 games, like how's that helping a kid?
Yeah.
What kind of experience is that creating for a kid? Um, you know, but when I'm coaching varsity, sorry, you're not good. You're not up to par right now. You can't get in the game. We're not,
Yeah.
we're here to win, so that you have to, and parents, rightfully so, don't always see how they're different. Well, lacrosse is lacrosse, like, yeah, how is it any different? But
Yeah.
just the environment you're in it's very different, and even with the skills that you do or the concepts, we can get way more in depth in high school because we're with them every day for like 2 months, 6 days a week. We're 2 hour, whereas in the club season, we're with them 2 days a week in the summer, and so um, that's where the communication of what we're trying to accomplish becomes very important. Like, parents, this is not your high school season. It's going to look different.
Mhm.
So you can't let them in on all of the strategy and the principles and the concepts of what you're trying to do if you don't communicate with them. And then, to your point, you said, 2 weeks goes in and something comes up and now you have to address it if you didn't have that parent meeting. If you have a parent meeting a couple weeks after the season starts, you're already as a coach putting out that, that feeling that, communication is on a back burner for me. I want that to be like up front before the season even starts. Here's what we're going to communicate well.
Yeah.
And, um, you can stop a lot of things from happening. Just miscommunication, misunderstandings. You can stop all that if you just communicate well early.
Mhm.
I'm not one of those coaches that are like, I need 24, I need 48 hours after a game to communicate. No, I'm pretty dang confident in what I do. So
Yeah.
if you can manage your own emotions, I'll be able to manage mine. And if we can have a respectful conversation, I don't care when you talk to me,
Mhm.
but it's going to be respectful or the conversation's over,
Yeah.
and so, and it usually is around playing time.
Of
But
course.
something that, that I try to, actually, it's a verse I talk about with my teams all the time. It's 1 Corinthians 12:12, and it's the verse about the body has many different members, but the many members are one body. And
Mhm.
we talk about that. Now in FCA, I can talk about it as it is in the Bible. And I coach my public high school team. I have to, you know, I can't go into scripture as in depth as that I can in
Mhm.
FCA, unfortunately. But we give roles to everybody on the team. It doesn't matter if you're, the All-American or if you're just trying lacrosse for the first time and you're whatever. Like, as a coach, I think it's my job to make sure that every kid feels valued on the team, whether it's my high school team or the third grade team, Um, but it's the same thing with parents, you know, they have to have a voice, they have to feel that they're valued, not for just bringing their kid to practice, not for just paying the player dues, But there's roles that can be done. There's things outside of the game. Like maybe you trust us. You came to us to coach, so we're going to coach, the best of our ability. But there's things you can do. Like why don't we do a team picnic? Why don't we do at the hotel? We'll do a barbecue. And instead of spending all this money and sitting in a restaurant trying to keep your kids from running around and making everyone mad, like why don't we just someone bring a grill and we're going to do hamburgers and hot dogs. The kids like it more anyways, rather than, I mean, every kid gets chicken tenders and fries, which is not good for you if you're at a lacrosse tournament. So at least they can have hamburgers and someone will bring some watermelon and, it creates a family atmosphere and parents can run that. And so they have some, I want you to organize this. I want you, that gives them a stake in what is going on. And that's the culture that we're trying to create in a team. And that, one of the things is how do you create, how do you get the parents to buy into the culture that you're trying to create? Well,
Yeah.
you can't get them to buy into it if you don't let them be a part of it. Like they're not going to buy into it. Yeah, I mean, they'll be happy that you win games, but they're not going to buy into a culture just because you win a game. Like they need to be a part of that culture. They need to know that their kid is valued. They need to know that they're valued. They need to know that the coach is going to do their job, and I mean, I put everything I got into almost every practice plan that I put together, and it's detailed. It's, like I feel like that's my job is to be professional, even with my practice plans, so just in that they, I ask my kids all the time, what'd you do at practice today? And granted, kids are gonna, not give the whole thing, and they're gonna, summarize it and all that stuff. But if my kid comes home and says, "Oh, we scrimmaged," what else did you do? Oh, we just scrimmaged. Well, the coach didn't put a lot into that practice plan, and not
Yeah,
to,
that's an easy toss up as a coach. Oh, I didn't come prepared. We're going to scrimmage today.
yeah, like roll the ball out, and so you got to do more,
Yeah.
as a coach. You should care about your sport more than that, to just scrimmage. And of course, there's times you got to scrimmage, but
Mhm.
um, I think if parents know that you're doing that and you're making that effort, then they're gonna buy into that culture. They're gonna know where you're coming from, and you got to be able to have tough conversations with them too, respectfully.
Yeah.
I think you can kind of, you know, cover yourself in grace if you just take that mindset of this dad that's ripping mad at me right now really just loves his son and just wants the
Yeah.
best for him.
Yeah. I was, and that was one of the things I was going to ask you about. Like, how do you, what are some ways that you try and create that culture that you're looking for? How do you get parents to buy into it? And I think you made a great point. It's not just about saying like, hey, this is what we're going, this is what we want to do, but you do have to invite them in. And I do like that idea of like the team picnics and things like that on the road, because then it's not just about you saying it, but now they're seeing you there, and in that moment too, like they're getting to see Saul the man, not just Saul the coach,
Right.
right? And you can
Yeah.
talk about the football games that are going on, or you can talk about you know your trucks or whatever the heck you guys
Yeah.
want to talk about. My truck's bigger than yours, type of thing. And that's where relationships get to be formed, and they get to know you as a coach a little bit more. Now, I'm not saying you have to be best friends with all these
Right.
parents, obviously, but those are important times where they're seeing another layer to it, and they're being like, okay, like I'm seeing the person that is with my son for hours and hours on a weekend. I'm
Yeah.
seeing the person, like for me, like in the dugout, like yeah, I'm having all these conversations with the kids that the parents will probably never know, right? Because the kids are never going to tell them. It's not my responsibility to say, hey, just so you know, I
Right.
told I told Jimmy this or whatever. Um, but now they get to see like, okay, this is someone that cares about my kid. This is someone who's talking to my kid. I like the way that they're very respectful when they talk to me. They don't have a bad mouth. Like, this is someone that I want my son or my daughter to be around. And so I do
Yeah.
think that those things are important, because then that is when the parents do get to buy into like, all right, I see what Saul's trying to do here. I can be part of it. The other parents, if they're not part of it, they're the first ones as soon as the kid gets in the car to be like, why didn't coach put you in over so and so? Why is he not playing you more? And they put all these thoughts into these kids' heads, and then that comes out in practice, or that comes out in the game with how much effort the kid's going to put in, or animosity towards another player and things like that. So, this was a great conversation. I think not only for coaches to understand their role in developing this relationship. But I also think, for parents, if you're a parent of a child that's in youth sports that you don't coach, like just know that like as coaches, we balance a lot, and
Yeah.
there's a lot going on to it. But at the end of the day, most coaches want what's best for your kids too, and we're trying to do it right by the team. Um, but I think it's just important to, hey, if you've committed to this team as a parent, your responsibility is to make sure that your kids are also committed, that you're doing what you need to do in at home and in the car and off season stuff to like forget about the physical piece, like leave that to the coaches if you will, but all those other things, like the mentality and hey, how can I as a parent make my son or daughter a better teammate? How can I encourage those things?
Yeah.
It's little things that we can do, but that's part of what you're going to see is making your child more successful on and off the field, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think again, I'm not good at everything. I'm definitely not good at everything, but there are things I'm good at, and I feel coaching is one of those things. And you know, I'm confident in what I do, and I think coaches that just bring energy to games, bring energy to practices, bring professionalism to games, and care about developing a great practice plan and a great game plan. Parents see that stuff, and they may not agree with everything that you do,
Mhm.
but they at least see that you're putting time, you're putting energy, and you're putting, care into the team, um, I think you don't have to be screaming all the time and yelling all the time, but I feel like coaches sometimes can open themselves up to some parent, disgruntlement if they're just sitting back doing nothing, and again, I challenge coaches. Like I say this to, when parents say, how come my kid isn't playing more? I oftentimes would say, well, tell me why you think he should be playing more.
Mm,
What is he doing? What has he done? What did he do before the season? What does he do after the season? What does he do at home? What did he do during the game to make you think that he should play more? Why do you think he should play more? And if they don't have a great answer to that, well, that's their answer. That's
mm,
why he's not playing more. And it kind of goes both ways. If a coach is or a parent's upset, you know, and a coach says, well, why are you upset? And they're able to list, well, you didn't do this, you didn't, you're not putting any time into that, you're not, you're late to practice or this or that. Like, you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm doing everything I can to make this a great experience for my players, and I'm putting a lot of time in as a coach, and I'm bringing energy, and I'm trying to make myself better. My my defensive strategy is way different now than it was 15 years ago.
mm,
I'm learning as the game is growing, and that's my job as a coach to keep up with it. There's certain fundamentals that will always be the same, but the game is changing. Basketball is changing. I'm sure baseball is changing. I don't know as much about baseball, but the game of baseball there's a pitch clock now. So like
yeah.
things are different now. As a coach, you have to keep up with that. And if you don't, then you're opening yourself up to some of those tough conversations, and you really don't
Mhm.
have a leg to stand on if you're not putting any time into it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my pastors once said, and when you have these, just you bringing up the tough conversations remind me that he once said, he doesn't like conflict, he doesn't seek it out, but he also doesn't want to be the person that runs from conflict. And so we're gonna,
Yeah.
I'm not looking to, butt heads with a parent, but it's gonna come a time, and we got to stand our ground if we're doing if we're giving 100% of what we're doing, and we know what we're trying to instill, and we see the vision for these kids 5 years down the road, not just 5 weeks down the road. Then you're going to be, then parents are going to understand that.
Yeah.
But you got to be, you do, like you said, you do have to be prepared for that, and it's going to happen. And we could do everything right, and at the end of the day, parents are still going to, have something to criticize us for. And you have to understand as a coach, like when you took that position, you took part of that on there too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and,
Every,
and
every
that's
parent
just
has eyes for their son and their son only. We have to have eyes for all 20 that we coach.
exactly.
So,
Yeah. Well, uh, thank you, Saul. We appreciate you coming on and
yeah.
gleaning us, giving us a little insight into the parent coach relationship. We could probably do a whole nother episode just on some of this stuff, but it's an
Yeah.
important piece, and I think there were some good takeaways here. I know I have some stuff that I wrote down, and hopefully our listeners, take that. And if you guys have more questions on some of this stuff, like this is what FCA is here for. We have a ministry for coaches, and we want to help you guys succeed in all that you're doing, not just with your athletes, not just on the field, but what's going on with those athletes off the field, and that includes their families and their parents.
Yep. Yep.
So, thank you, Saul, and we'll see you
Absolutely.
guys on the next episode.